October 18th, 1926. Dear Charlie, if you're reading this, then your mama has received news of my death. That statement is probably quite confusing to you, considering you already think I'm dead. The truth is, the truth is complicated, and depending on how old you are when you read this, my boy, it may not make sense to you for some time. But I don't believe in mollycoddling, so I'm just going to tell it to you straight, son, and hope when you're ready that you'll understand. When I served in the Great War, I was recruited into a new and specialized program called the Corps of Intelligence Police. The CIP was part of the United States Official Espionage Program, MID. I was sent on a combat intelligence mission with another soldier, Private Winslow Fairbanks. We were to gather information on the Germans just after the Battle of Amiens that started the 100 Days campaign. Fairbanks and I had been rivals since we first joined the Army and CIP program back in 1917. But when it came to executing a mission, we worked real well together. We had orders from our colonel, Ralph Vonderman, to infiltrate Ludendorff's highest-ranking officers and gather what information we could about their location, infantry numbers, weapons, and other preparation for battle after Amiens. After we got in and got the information we needed, we arranged to meet up with a few other CIP agents on assignment before heading back to our unit. When we reached our rendezvous spot, however, it was clear the other agents hadn't been as lucky as us. They were dead, and German soldiers were waiting to intercept us. I knew we had to get the information we'd gathered back to Vonderman, and also knew Fairbanks stood a better chance if I stayed behind and held the Germans off. So I sent him on and postponed the inevitable for long enough that he could get beyond harm's reach. I thought that would be the end for me, but the Germans surprised me and said I'd fought too bravely for them to kill me. Instead, they took me as a POW. Thankfully, as POW camps go, I was treated well, and I even became good friends with a few guards, some Jewish fellas who taught me German. When the war was finally over and most of the officers and guards at our camp abandoned post, all prisoners were left behind to fend for themselves. My Jewish officer friends were some of the guards who lingered behind. They decided to take pity on me and invited me home to Munich with them. They helped me get the occasional odd job so I could make enough money to return home to your mother. While I was in Munich, however, I got to see firsthand the state war had left Germany in. My friends began to tell me about a particular political party called the Workers' Party that was on the rise. It was causing the Jewish community a great deal of concern. I was still a CIP agent, so I decided to attend one or two of the party's meetings to see if I could glean any important intelligence to take back to America. The first meeting seemed harmless enough, but the second was more enlightening. Among other things, I discovered why my friends were so concerned. Not only were blatant anti-Semitic philosophies freely shared by party members, but it didn't take long to surmise that the Workers' Party and many of their philosophies had the potential to overthrow a German government that had been fatally weakened by war and was already unraveling. It was still too early to tell, so I asked my friends to keep me informed about the political state of things in Germany. They agreed, and I left Germany for the United States. In February 1919, I was reunited with your mother, and it was a rare moment that I'll never forget as long as I live. She was even more beautiful than the angel I married, and despite the fact that I was returning home 6 months after the war had ended, she'd never given up hope that I would come back to her. We had a few months of uninterrupted peace, despite a war-weary world being ravaged by the third wave of the Spanish influenza pandemic. Then my Jewish friends began writing to me again. Their letters were subtle at first, but as the months carried on, their letters grew more frequent and disturbing. It was then I decided to take them to Colonel Vonderman. He agreed that after the war we'd just fought, it would be in the United States' best interest if something was done about it. So, in September 1919, I was back in Munich, this time in an official capacity as an undercover CIP agent. The third Workers' Party meeting I attended was held at the Burgerbräu Keller, an old run-down beer hall in Munich. Not only had the party's philosophies grown significantly more radical and dangerous since the last meeting I attended, but there was a man there, an officer from the German army, who had obviously been sent undercover to observe the meeting's proceedings that night as well. I watched this man carefully throughout the night to see just how the current German government would respond to the Workers' Party philosophies. As each new speaker took the podium at the front of the hall, I watched this soldier become so enraged by something one of the speakers had said that he shot up from his chair mid-lecture and proceeded to rail on the poor presenter for some 15 minutes or so before coming to himself. In the shocked silence that followed, I overheard Anton Dexler, one of the party's founders, whisper the following to another gentleman near him. "This man's got the gift of gab," he said. "We could use him." At the end of the meeting, I saw Dexler approach the man and offer him a pamphlet of some kind. I immediately approached Dexler and asked if he had any more of those pamphlets, that I was very interested in what was said that night and wanted to learn more. When Dexler obliged, I asked him who the interfering man was. He told me that he'd just learned his name was Adolf Hitler. That night, I read Dexler's entire pamphlet. Its purpose was to explain his philosophies, which consisted mainly of building a strong nationalist, pro-military party made up of members from the working class. Unfortunately, his pamphlet also happened to share many anti-Semitic sentiments. It wasn't long before I realized how deceptively appealing Dexler's philosophies would be to the working class of Germany. The next morning, I wired my findings to Vonderman. By nightfall, I received new orders that changed the course of our family's lives from then until now. Vonderman, under the instruction of President Woodrow Wilson, ordered me to go into deep cover for the unforeseeable future. "We just learned your mother was expecting you before I left for Germany, so following his orders would mean I might never get to meet my own child." I can't express how I wrestled with that reality, Charlie. I'd always wanted to be a father, more than anything. In the end, however, knowing I was doing my part to create a safer, freer world for you felt like the most fatherly thing I could do at that moment. So I resolved to do my duty, but under two conditions. First, your mother would be told the truth. And second, when or if I was killed, and if your mother concurred, you would be told as well. I felt that if I couldn't meet you and raise you in person, I could at least leave you a legacy to help you on your way. Vonderman agreed to my terms, and the arrangements were made. Deep cover required that I erase myself from my previous life with your mother. My death of the influenza was orchestrated shortly after for that purpose. Hank Burke was erased, and I became Hans Brandstetter. I was a spy for the United States government. President Wilson assigned me the code name Lionheart in honor of my sacrifice, and I ventured out in my new life, unsure if I would ever meet my unborn child or see your mother again. From that moment on, my every action became about the mission, which was to infiltrate the Workers' Party and see where its philosophies led it and Germany. If the party fizzled out, I would be able to come home. If it didn't, I was to be the United States government's eyes on the inside of Germany. It wasn't until 7 years later that I learned your mother had given birth to a son. That's when I decided to hold Vonderman to his word and write you this letter. Now, my boy, if you're wondering if my sacrifice was worth it, as I write this letter now, I cannot say. The young soldier I heard in that Munich beer hall, Adolf Hitler, has since joined the Workers' Party and is climbing its ranks quickly. Only history will tell if my sacrifice was a worthy one. Either way, I hope with all my heart that you will forgive me for not being there to watch you grow into a man. I assure you, a day hasn't passed since I last saw your mama, her belly swollen with you growing inside, that I haven't ached for you both. Take care of her for me, son, and be a good boy. I love you. Your Papa, Hank Burke.